of vaccines, and a lot of focus went on to the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. 80,000 of these vaccines will be arriving in the country next week. But again, saying that at the end of the day, is President Cyril Ramaphosa serious enough? Saying that just 80,000 vaccines, South Africa being fed with scraps, and because of some of the delays, and South Africa didn't even bother at all to get into the vaccine queue.
So the complexity of the COVAX agreement, I think, needs to be borne in mind. South Africa is not alone in this, in the global inequality around vaccines. This is not to excuse some of government's communication failures and some of the ways in which their ideas and policies around vaccines really were kept away from South Africans in 2020. But we must also remember that we are one of the many countries that are paying the price for the first world countries, the industrial rich northern countries, overbuying. So places like Canada buying, scores more, multiples more vaccines than will actually be used because their population are far smaller than the number of vaccines that they use. So the rollout campaign, I think, is hampered by some government failure, but it's also hampered by some of the complexities of the South African situation. So we've had the development of a new strain, 501Y version 2 or B2, that actually requires slight tweaking on the vaccination. And then we've seen the kind of vaccination problems when we've had previous health campaigns. So the long time it took to combat TB, the way in which ARVs got rolled out, there are lessons to be learned there. And I think, government failures must be held to account, and the officials. But South Africa's the general population in South Africa also need to think about how ordinary people are going to assist one another with this campaign. We saw wonderful work by South Africans in the community action networks last year during the lockdown. And perhaps similar structures may have to be used to assist, because it is pointless to simply point the finger at government and blame them for their failures when the rest of us will be paying the price. Yes, hold them accountable, but also start working on public education campaigns in our communities and start working with people so that they are prepared to understand the different vaccines, how they work, why they may or may not work in South Africa. And the public health campaign with community involvement, I think, is very crucial.
But also, Angelo, when one looks at the confusing and the mixed signals that the president of the country has been sending, and we know that just a few weeks ago, he said that, there was absolutely no money and the country was bankrupt, in a sense that, when we look at the COVID-19, some of the relief grants and those things as well, the 350 Rand grant. And people are now starting to question as to, there was a turnaround and suddenly he's found money, and I don't know where the money has come from, but also at the same time sending mixed signals and in terms of how ambitious the government is in terms of projects and the like, in terms of promising jobs, and growing jobs in the marketplace and the like as well. And, we see this year after year. We see all these ambitious projects being announced. We see this message of hope during the State of the Nation address. And a year goes by and we see very little has materialized.
So this is where the political system is very important that we've elected in South Africa. This was not just a presidential address to the nation. This was an address that opens Parliament, and that is the President's announcement of the executive's plan to the legislature. And it is now up to the people's elected representative in the legislature, and that includes ANC MPs as well as opposition parties, to interrogate the president and to debate the speech, so that's important, and then interrogate his plans, and then to interrogate the other members of the executive who are going to lay out the detail of this plan. So we will want to see from the various ministers not only how they plan to deal with this issue and bring all of these, as you put them, promises to reality, but at what cost and with what cooperation. So if we just think of the infrastructure and broadband rollout to public schools, hospital, police stations, and other public buildings, that will require cooperation between the Minister of Telecommunications, the Minister of Public Works, the Minister of Education, and given the security and safety issues, Minister of Police. Otherwise, what we see is simply, again, wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, and then the criminality element where, as we've seen with tablets in school, they get stolen by local criminal syndicates and the children suffer. So again, this idea that this is a promise, it is up to the political system that we've suggested, or that we have, to suggest questions, interrogations, and hold the members of the executive to account. This isn't just a moment in which you have inter-party applause. So ANC MPs have the same responsibility as opposition MPs, which is to interrogate the executive and ask questions about how these plans are to be implemented, at what cost, and where the money is going to come from. And next week, when we hear Tito Mbowene's speech, we're likely to ask similar kinds of questions as the public, and our representatives should certainly ask them, where is this money coming from? How much of it is going to be paid? And particularly from a finance minister who the Auditor General just indicated his own division had irregular expenditure. This is after, for 2 years in a row, he's been telling us to tighten our belts. The president's plan sounds like a good plan in so many respects, but as you've indicated, we've heard these kinds of things before. The difference now is we're in super crisis mode. We have a global pandemic to deal with. We have a local health crisis that is the symptom of that pandemic. And we have an economic crisis consequent to the pandemic that has worsened because we didn't start off with that in a particularly good economic position. So yes, it's a complex field, but our political system in South Africa means that there are checks and balances that citizens and their representatives have to use. And the fact that we haven't used them as well as we could have before may explain partly why we sit with the situation we do.
Well, Angelo, we thank you for your time with us here on Solar Media this morning and for your analysis in unpacking the State of the Nation address. We wish you all the best. Please take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Shukran.
They say breakfast is the most important